Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Let's implement the text field, a reusable component that we're going to build from the ground up, and it has to handle three basic components at once. It's going to handle a normal text field, an autocomplete, and a password field. I wasn't pretty much satisfied with the implementation due to a lot of reasons. Couldn't find a way actually to do, for example, clickable leading icon, or to use our custom SVG files under the leading icon and the train icon. Another thing that I didn't like actually is about the label. It has that kind of background to it. Hopefully they're going to add some kind of customization, or to allow the developers to use their own SVG files instead of using the default material design icons. With that being said, let's create under CoreUI a new component. Let's call it text field. As always, I would like to start from the code behind. First things first, let's define the enum that's going to set basically the type of this text field to a normal text field, password, or autocomplete. Let's start by defining the needed dependencies. Leading content has to be an object, and another object for training content. Basically, by doing this, we're going to be able to place the SVG file and make it clickable. And we can use any image for that matter. Next, I would like to add here a hint. It is basically the floating label content. Now we have to set the text that should be displayed, the content of the text field. I have added this framework metadata option, binds two-way by default to handle out of the box the validation, to allow back and forth, checking the text and reflecting basically the changes in real time. And because we need to handle in this text field the animation for floating label, and basically to check if the text field has focus, we have to add here a dependency property. Let's call it has focus. We have to customize the label. It's going to be shown above or within the control. And for customization, we have to add a border radius and the thickness of the border and the automation identifier for testing purposes. As I said earlier, we have to make this text field able to handle basically three components: the password, the normal text field, as well as the autocomplete. I'm going to add here a dependency property of type enumerable of type object that's going to hold the suggestions for the autocomplete mode, items shown in the dropdown. And since we have to show each item individually, we need to set the data template, the template used to present each suggestion item in our view. And I would like to add another dependency property for the background of the autocomplete container and the background of the text field. Another dependency property that's going to be for highlighted suggested item color. Whenever we hover on a certain suggestion, we're going to set a color. And with the same manner, if we have selected an item, let's customize its color. Now we have to set the dependency property for the type of this text field. Whenever this type changes, we need to update or re-render the text field. Therefore, I'm going to add here a function that's going to be responsible for this. Let's call it onType property change. Let's create this function. Let's set a dependency property for the error message that's going to be displayed for feedback of validation. And another dependency property related to the feedback validation, more specifically, the style that should be applied for the validation. Now let's focus on this particular section. Whenever we change from text field or normal text field and password, or for example, autocomplete, and we have that scenario actually in our application, whenever we toggle the password visible, actually it's secure text field and a normal text field are two separate components under WPF. Now, if we try to toggle the visibility on and off of the visible password, we have to re-render text field components. First of all, let's check if this dependency object is of type text field. In this case, we need to check if we are under a normal text field or autocomplete or password. Now for the normal text field, I'm going to handle the focus and the visuals. Basically, we're going to attach focus event handler for the text box. I'm going to use this particular text box in our user control. And with the same for the autocomplete and for the password. I'm going to add the public event handler for focus. This is the event that the consumers can subscribe to, and another event that should be triggered when an autocomplete suggestion is selected. Now let's switch back to the example file. We're going to represent a normal text field with a text box, and for the password text field, it's going to be password box, and for the autocomplete, a combo box. Therefore, right off the bat, let's disable the style for the text field and the password box and combo box to null. Now, instead of this grid, I'm gonna put a container or a border. I would like to add here some padding, and for the background of this particular border, which is the main content or the main container of the text field, background color, and the border thickness, and the corner radius. Now we have to customize the border brush. If we have an error, use, for example, a red color. And if we don't have an error, the normal border color. And if it's focused, we're going to use another color. Therefore, we have to proceed with a technique under WPF, multi-binding property that we want to customize, which is border brush. Inside, we have to provide the multi-binding. And we have to do here the converter that's going to handle this dynamically. We're going to implement the converter later on. Now we have just to do here what are the conditions on which we're going to apply a certain color. For the first one, it has to be according to the error. And we have to specify again another condition, has focus that we have defined here under the dependency property, and another one, whether to apply the validation style or not. Now let's focus on implementing the converter. This is basically the first converter that we're going to implement in this video or in this application. Under the CoreUI, a new folder, I'm going to call it converters or converter. I'll create a new class. I'm going to call it brush selector, and it has to implement a multi-value converter. Now we have to add the attached properties for this brush selector converter. It has to be required. The first property that we want to define, which is of type brush. Make sure to choose System, Windows, and Media, is the error brush. Another brush for the focus brush and default brush. So if you're not familiar basically with converters, we cannot do logic under the XAML file. We cannot do, for example, here, if let's say, I don't know, if type or if has error or if error equal null, hence the use of converters. First of all, we have to get the inputs are basically the error message, has focus, and apply validation. It has to be in the correct order. It has the index 0, therefore we can access this particular value. And if the error message is not available, however, if it's available, we have an error. Therefore, we have to do has error equal value not null. With the same manner, we have to do is focus and the apply validation style. Now we have all the inputs. We're gonna do here a simple check statement with if has error, and we have to apply basically the validation style. In this case, we're going to return the error brush. Now, if it's focused, focus brush. And for the default case, default brush. The other direction of the converter, it's rarely used under WPF. You have to build, first of all, the project. We have to use converter, which is brush selector converter. Now we have to import basically this, and you have to specify key for this converter, so we can use it in our XAML file. I'm gonna call it brush selector. Now we have to define the default brush. I'm gonna get it from the static resource, secondary for the default. For the error, it's gonna be error, and for the focus, it's gonna be primary. Now we have to use the brush selector in the multi-binding section. To use it, we have to do static resource, and we have the brush selector. Now we have customized the border brush. First of all, let's add a grid, and let's define the columns. For the first column, it's gonna be auto. The second column is gonna occupy the maximum width. Now we have to place the leading icon by using the content control, and we have to place it vertically at the center. Now we have to put the main input area. It's gonna be at the second placement of our grid. Basically, it has the index 1. And we have to put here the trailing content, grid column 2. And all of those three components has to be vertically centered. Use here grid, and I would like to add here the floating label, a padding. Let's name it, for example, text label. Let's give it a margin. For the horizontal alignment, it should be left, and the vertical alignment center. Now we have just to add the content of this label. I'm gonna add here the font size. I'm gonna do 12, for example. For the foreground, it's gonna be secondary, and we have to set the target for this particular label. It's gonna be for the autocomplete text box. We have to create this particular text box later on. This label shouldn't be visible all the time. Therefore, we have to create a converter to handle this section of the visibility of this label. Let's name this converter non-empty string to visible converter. This class should implement iValueConverter. It's going to return if the value is a string and the string is not null or empty. In this case, we're gonna do visibility visible, otherwise it should be collapsed. Build the project. We're gonna add it here. And for the visibility of this label, and we have to specify here the dependency property for the input and which converter are we using. String to visibility converter. This label should be animated. We have to add here render transform. Let's assign a name to this transform. Initially for the X position should be 4, Y position should be 0. And we're going to change the values in the code behind once we get to that bridge. Now we are ready to put the normal text field, which is the standard text box. Underneath the label, I would like to add here some padding. This padding should be normalized across different components, password box as well as the combo box. And we have to center this particular component vertically, and let's add its dedicated automation properties, automation ID for testing purposes. Next, we have to assign the background to transparent. Why we do that? Because we need the background to be used from the container, not from the text box. The border thickness should be 0. And for the font family, let's assign the font family from the CoreUI. Let's do, for example, regular, Lato regular. For the font size, let's say, for example, 16. And we have to disable the error template, null. The foreground should be foreground, and the caret brush is foreground. And we have to use dynamic resource to handle both dark theme and light theme. Now we have to set the text, which is the value of the text field. Inside, we have to specify the validation rules. However, here we have to add the validation on target update true, which is very important. And that's pretty much it for this text, normal text field. I'm going to fold this particular section. Underneath, we're going to add another component that has to be on the top of this text field, and it's going to be only visible when selected by the developer, represented by a combo box, padding, vertical alignment, the autocomplete, background and font family, and pretty much the same thing that we have done earlier. We have to use is editable, and we have to set is text search enabled to false. I would like to customize this particular container style, as well as the item template and the style of this combo box. I'm gonna do that later on. However, let's assign the property text by the binding text. Now for the item template, it's gonna be from dependency property text field, as well as the item source from the suggestions. Now we have to override one important event, which is selection changed. Going to implement it later on, and we have to define the style. I would like to add the combo box item highlighting style, and the target should be combo box item. For the background, it's going to be transparent. For the padding, let's do, for example, 8 horizontally and 4 vertically. And for the horizontal content alignment, it should be stretch. And we have to specify the vertical content alignment to center. Next, we need to style the template, basically the content of this combo box item. And we have to set the value as shown here, but this is not what we want, it's too much. For the target combo box item, we have to assign the border from the template binding background, and it has to snap to device pixels. And we have to pass here the content presenter item of the combo box, placeholder for the item of the combo box. I'm gonna add here a margin and vertical alignment from the template binding. Now we have to specify the triggers for highlighting and selection of the item. I'm gonna mark it with this comment. We are interested in the property is highlighted. Therefore, it's going to be as shown here, trigger is highlighted and value is true. Whenever this particular item is highlighted, what we have to override. From the binding under the dependency property, by using the setter, and the target name is the border and the property is background. Now, whenever this item is highlighted, we're going to use suggested item color from the dependency property. Now, when it's selected, we're going to use the dependency property selected suggested item color, highlighting style. Now we need to define the combo box without the arrow for autocomplete. Let's assign the key for this particular style, something like combo box no arrow, and the target is the combo box itself. Let's override the property overrides default style to true, and we have to override the template. Now for the template, it should be the inside of the combo box. It consists of a text box, which is an editable area text box part of the combo box. Let's give it a name, something like part editable text box. I'm going to give it a padding from the template binding. Horizontal alignment should be stretched and vertical alignment center. Background should be transparent because I'm going to use the background from the container. The border thickness 0, font family from the template binding. Same for the font size and the foreground color. Put the style to null to disable the style. And for the caret brush, as we have done earlier, dynamic resource and foreground. Now we have to hide the toggle button drop-down button, collapsed. I'm going to accept this proposition for now. I think it's good. We have forgot here to add a grid. That's why it's complaining about more than one user control. Next, we have to define the pop-up containing the drop-down items, which is very important in our case. And let's give it a name, part pop-up. All right, it's reading my mind here. Initially, I'm gonna accept this solution, but I have to delete the rest. The actual width from the template parent. Allow transparency to true, focusable false, and is open from the template binding is drop-down menu from the parent template. For the placement should be bottom, and the pop-up animation should be slide. Let's wrap everything within a border, and for the background should be from the dependency property, autocomplete background color. Another property that we have to override, which is the border brush, should have basically the same color from autocomplete background color. It's gonna be the same thing as here. For the border thickness, let's do 1 and snap to device pixels. Now what should be inside the border? We need this particular section of the autocomplete to be scrollable, as we have done under the other apps, Vuetify application and Swift and Kotlin. Therefore, I have to use here scroll viewer, and it has to snap to device pixels. And whatever we're gonna use under the presentation of the suggestion, it's gonna be under the items presenter. And for the keyboard navigation, directional navigation contained. Now let's come back to the part of the autocomplete or the combo box. Let's add the item container style from static resource, combo box item highlight style, and the style from static resource, and let's choose combo box no arrow. As you can see here, we have no longer the background under the combo box. And that's all for the combo box section of our autocomplete. Let's fold this section and let's add a comment here, autocomplete. The last text field that we have to implement or to use, it's for the password. Let's name it password box with two-way binding. Of course, it has to be workaround because it's not supported under WPF by default, of course. I think that we're going to stop here. Let's continue the rest in the next video. Happy coding!